Hey coders, welcome to the first video for the advanced level contest for the Mission to Mars Foothill Elementary 2019-2020 coding contest. We hope you'll have fun with this one. This is going to be a bigger project than we've ever done before, and hopefully you'll be able to learn and apply a lot of the skills that we've done over the years. And if this is your first time doing one of these, I think you'll be okay too. Just watch carefully what I do in the videos. And the nice thing about the videos is, don't forget, you can pause and rewind. Now, if you've never used Scratch before, you really would be better off starting with the first video on the lower grade contest. That'll give you a crash course in how to use the Scratch interface. I'm going to assume that you've already done that. That's why you're doing the advanced level here, and so we'll just get started. So let's think about our project here. Our project is going to be one project that has 8 different games in it. And so we're not going to close this one and open up a new one. We're going to use we're going to put all of our projects into this one and just make one big game. So one thing to expect is our sprites down here is going to get pretty full. We're going to have lots of different sprites on here. And we'll even reuse some of them, but we'll call them different sprites because they'll have different code for different purposes. So we're going to have lots of sprites, we're going to have lots of backdrops, and the trick for this project is how to get them talking to each other so they all know what they're supposed to do at the right time. I think you'll be alright though. Let's get to it. First thing we want to do is pick a nice spacey backdrop. So I'm going to come to backdrop, and if you type in space, for the title screen, I like this one right here that just says Nebula. Kind of future looking. And for the title screen, I think that'll look real nice. Let's get rid of this cat. What we want to happen on the title screen is when you hit the green flag to run the program, the player will see the name of the game and then 8 different buttons. So the player can choose which program or which game they want to play first. Okay? So the first thing let's do is add some text to the backdrop to show the name of the game. So come to backdrops, convert to vector. Text is easier to work in as a vector. Click that. That'll finish loading. And then this text button, let's change it to, I'm going to pick red. You can do obviously whatever color you want. I'm going to do a nice Martian red. And then start here and type Mission to Mars. And you can fiddle around with the fonts if you want to as well. For this one, I'm going to try to do this one here that says marker. Okay, and because we did this as a vector, you can just change the size by grabbing the corner and moving things around. So there's our title. Okay, we can get rid of this blank backdrop. We're not going to use that. It might just be in the way later. And let's give this a name. So this is home screen. Okay, it's very important that we name our objects in this program because we're going to have tons of backdrops, tons of sprites, and you don't want to get confused. While we're at it, let's give our program a name. Mission to Mars. Now, boys and girls, if you want to add some more text down here at the bottom, it would be a really good idea to put your name on this so that everyone knows this is your beautiful creation. Let's come to code and get rid of the backdrops. Let's add a button for each of the different games that's going to be in our project. So let's just start with one. So choose a sprite, type in button. You can pick one of these you like. We're going to put a little bit of text on it, so try to pick one that would make sense to have a letter or a word on it. I got this gray one here. Let's come to costumes and let's put some text on it. So I'm on the text tool. Going to come here. Change that to number 1. I think I'd rather have black for that. Not like that. So make sure you're only highlighting the text there. And maybe I don't like the marker font for this one, and I'm going to pick curly. Okay, and the same thing as before, with the arrow tool, you can adjust the size just by dragging on one of the corners there. So here is our button. And you can put words on there if you want to, but because there's only 8 projects, I'm just going to number them 1 through 8. Okay, and let's go to code. think about this for a second. What do we want this sprite not to do when we click on it? What do we want the sprite to do when we run the program? Well, sometimes it's not going to be on the screen. And so we could do here, when a green flag is clicked, go to looks and pick this one that says show. But one of the things about a big project like this one is we want the title screen to show up at the beginning. And based on what you click, all of the other things will happen. And so we're only going to use this green flag clicked event one time in the whole project. The rest will all be based on events that happen. And I actually don't want to attach that to a button because we're going to control that event a different way. So let's get rid of that. And what I want to do is come to the backdrop and have the backdrop control what happens when you hit the green flag. You can actually add code to your backdrop. So here's code backdrop. We're going to put our green flag here, and we're going to use a broadcast. So when the green flag is clicked, let's broadcast a message. And the message we're going to say is go to main screen. Okay? That's going to tell the program that the player needs to look at the main screen. And then what we're going to do over here on button 1 is, instead of saying when I get the green flag, I'm going to say when I receive, go to main screen. Okay? And that's very similar, because when you hit the green flag, the backdrop will send a broadcast that says go to main screen. And the button 1, when it receives go to main screen, then it'll do something. So it's just one extra step, but it gives you a lot more control over what happens. Let's talk for a second about what a broadcast does. A broadcast lets different objects in your program talk to each other. So we have a sensing block that says if they're touching, but that's really limited to what a sprite is able to communicate to another sprite. But with a broadcast, you can have one sprite send a message to other sprites in a pretty flexible and powerful way. Now, it's good to understand, though, that a broadcast is not the same as this say block, right? When it does a broadcast, it happens behind the scenes. The player won't ever see that. It's not like words will come up on the screen or out of the speakers. It just sends a little message in the background that tells other sprites to do things. Okay? So let's add another broadcast option to this button right here, because sometimes we don't want this button on the screen. So let's do a when I receive, and we're going to do a new message. So click on that little button here, new message. We're going to call this clear everything. Okay, and this clear everything is going to appear on every one of our sprites, because we want to be able to tell everything in the game to hide, and then only show up when it's supposed to. So let me give you an example. So here on looks, when we receive clear everything, we're going to hide. But when I receive go to main screen, then we want it to show. Now, there's not a button here that says clear everything, but let's add that to the backdrop. So when the green flag is clicked, broadcast, go to main screen, let's do an event that says broadcast, clear everything as well. Now you won't notice a difference here when we run this, right? Because, no, let's do broadcast, clear everything before you go to the main screen. So it'll clear everything, and then goes to the main screen. When button 1 receives clear everything, it hides, and then it receives go to main screen, then it shows. Right now that seems a little silly. It'll make more sense later on. Okay? Let's add something to this button, though, because sometimes things get moved around on the screen, and we want to make sure when the program starts that our buttons are all in the right spot. So let's put here, go to -150 and 0 under the main screen block. So when I receive go to main screen, it'll go right here. Okay? That's pretty good for button 1 right now. Let's rename that to be button 1, and then let's duplicate it. So now we have button 2, button 3. Let's keep going. We want 8 buttons. 4, 5, just keep going, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now we want to change the text on the buttons to make sure they match. So come to button 2, come to costumes, change that 1 to a double click on that, change it to a 2. Come to button 3, double click on that, change that to a 3. Button 4 is going to say a 4. Button 5 is going to say a 5. I know I'm going kind of fast, but don't forget you should be able to pause and rewind and watch this again if you want to. But that shouldn't be too confusing. All we did is now we have 8 buttons and they each have a different number on them. And like I said, you could put words on there if you want. I'm just going to keep mine as simple as possible, just with a number, because the player will figure out I'm going to do 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, something like that. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So on button 1, come back to the code, you see how we gave it this XY starting position? For button 2, because we duplicated it, that'll have the same code too. So if we run this, these buttons are actually all going to kind of disappear, because they all went to the exact same spot. So we want those to appear better on the screen, so let's change the code for each of these. I like the idea of just moving them over 100 each time, so instead of -150, I'm going to change button 2 to be -50. Button 3, we're going to add 100 to that, it'll be +50. Button 4 will be 150. Button 5, the X will be the same, but we want this one to drop down lower, so -50. Button 6 will be -50 and -50. Button 7 will be +50 and -50, and button 8 will be 150 and -50. And now that went really fast, but when I hit the green flag, you should see what happens. Okay, those all work pretty well. Maybe they're a little bit too big. I could shrink those down. I think what I'm going to do instead is change each of those to a -80. We'll like that gap a little better. On not each of those, each of the bottom buttons. Instead of -50, let's make those -80. Okay, and -80. We're going to hit the flag again. There we go. So our program has started off okay. Right now we've got 8 buttons with the different titles on the front. When you hit the stop sign, nothing happens, because that's all it does is when you hit the green flag, the backdrop says broadcast clear everything, and then broadcast go to main screen. Let's talk about this broadcast clear everything for a second. If I run this, each of these buttons knows what to do when it receives that event. When it receives clear everything, it's going to hide. So when I click on this broadcast clear everything, you should see these 8 buttons here just kind of vanish, which is what we want to happen. You'll see later on once we start doing different parts of our program. So go to main screen, brings us back up, clear everything, makes them go away. That's going to be really powerful to get things going. Okay, so I think that's the end of our first video. Make sure you watch the next one to see what happens when we click on button number 1.